Thank you, Vijaya. Good morning, everyone. It's a great session today to talk about the tech strategies that are evolving this media ecosystem. I'm happy to moderate this session with expert and industry leaders, Dominique from NBC, Nisreen, Rotana, Peter, Saudi Pro League, and Dom from Arqiva. We're gonna talk about streaming today, about AI, about monetization, personalization of ads. There are a lot of topics. I hope that we'll be able to fit everything in the 40-minute session. And we will start with streaming, and my first question is to you, Dom. Streaming is obviously the trend that is shifting this, that is shaking this media ecosystem. Penetration is extremely high, especially in the Gulf. We're talking about 85% depending on the age groups. And consumption across, so there's different age groups. Dominique, the first question is, what are the strategies for broadcasters to keep this balance between the linear broadcast and the streaming? Because obviously in the region, linear is still very important, whether in Saudi Arabia or UAE or the rest of the region. And it's being complemented by the streaming that also has a significant penetration.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Look, it's a great question. It's an interesting one, particularly for traditional broadcasters like NBC. The industry's changing, and the world is changing, and you can look globally at the trends of what's happening today, and we can see the natural shift of people from traditional linear viewing to on-demand streaming viewing, and that presents challenges, as you said, from an engagement point of view. And it's not going to stop, right? The proliferation of smart devices continues to grow around the world with the influx of cheaper, smart-enabled devices from places like China means that it's now very difficult to buy a device that's not a smart device. But at NBC, we embrace this, right? It's not something that should be feared. In 2019, we relaunched the Shahid product to become and basically transform it from what was traditionally a catch-up TV service to a premium streaming service. And NBC did this because we knew this trend was coming, and it was important for us to ensure that we had a seat at that table, that when people did shift from the viewing paradigm, from linear to on-demand, that we had a presence there. Now, to answer your question in terms of how we engage, there are obvious ways that you can continue to try and drive people to traditional linear viewing. You can use exclusive content. You can use windowing, so you put your newest content onto linear first, and then you move it onto your OTT platform. But that comes with a risk, because you don't want to alienate those customers who do want to watch on the streaming platform, so it's quite risky to do that. There's other techniques that you can use. Second screen viewing, for example. One of the things NBC looks at is ways to engage with our linear audience through companion devices. So you could be taking part in a poll using your device during a news show. You could be taking part in a quiz during a linear stream. If you watch some of live sports on NBC and on Shahid, you can watch on your main TV, and at the same time on a companion device, you can engage with statistics and replays and things like that. So there are ways to engage, but at NBC we believe in both, and we embrace both. You may have seen yesterday, our emerging media team announced the release of the NBC Now box. This is a new product that NBC have just launched, and it is our first ever pure streaming device, right? So this gives you an indication of the strategy and the direction that we're taking at NBC. But you mentioned this earlier. We genuinely believe that satellite distribution will remain dominant for entertainment across the Middle East and North Africa for at least the next 5 to 10 years. So I think in Q3 of this year, you will see the launch of another product from NBC, which will be a hybrid satellite box that will allow customers to plug in a box into their existing satellite capabilities and connect to the internet And this will combine the best of free linear with the best of pay TV in a unified user experience that will allow customers to browse free content together with Shahid content or Netflix content in a single user interface. And for us, we believe that this is the killer application that will appeal to the majority of our customers across the Middle East.
Thank you. Thank you. Nisreen, as Dominique mentioned, there's this lasting, like legacy for the streaming, but at the same time, today 75 to 85% of the people are streaming first in the region. How media companies should optimize their strategies to remain relevant in this streaming first environment?
No? Hello? Yes. So I think I'm going to look at what we are doing today for Rotana and the pass-through channels or the third-party channels that we actually work with. I see that when I first joined, I noticed that, as mentioned, we were very much reliant on the traditional streams, traditional linear streams that were carried on by satellite or by pay TV or by other OTT platforms. And each entity has their own strategy of how they want to progress. Having another streaming app today in a slightly cluttered market wasn't the strategy for us. So we looked at how we could sort of digitally transform our existing channels to be able to monetize those. So the first thing was, Rotana has 16 channels, 10 of which are free to air and are carried by most of the satellite providers here. What we did initially was we managed to embed the HBBTV protocol on those channels, and we transformed those from your analog channels to hybrid channels that we are able to connect to an ad server so that we could actually serve advertising on. But also noticing that advertisers require inventory at scale, we looked at how could we create maybe a marketplace that we could attract other players in the region, other broadcasters and publishers, to put their inventory in our marketplace, and also to help them transform without them having to invest anything in any resources. So we would have the full tech stack, the full ad tech stack in place, the right ad server, the right server-side ad insertion solution, connecting them to the right SSPs and to the right DSPs, so that we could then take on that whole section, including having a sales force behind it, who would be able to monetize that on their side. So that would help them with resources, and that would help them on the digital transformation, which a lot of the publishers and broadcasters are struggling with, because, digitally transforming is a massive investment, and we're not a very patient population, so we sort of want to see a return on that investment from day one. So what we do is we tell them, we'll take on that part, and we'll do a revenue share model with you, so you're not really investing in anything at the start, and then you could see as we go forward. Further to that, we have our own CDP. We've brought in a heavyweight data and analytics VP. What we've noticed as well is, because a lot of the publishers and the and the broadcasters are so scared with passing on data, we have a solution that today can actually look at audience behavior, look at various parameters that are not passed, that then we can start creating our profiles. So if you think about it, and moving more so, we're looking at this year doing digital linear, so looking at monetizing our channels as well as other channels on platforms like STC or other telcos, and as well pay TV operators, in partnership with those operators to help monetize these pass-through channels or the third-party channels.
Thank you. Talking about monetization, my next question is to Peter. Peter, since the the landscape is now hybrid. We're talking about AVOD, SVOD, fast, in addition to all the linear. How can sport broadcasters leverage this AVOD, SVOD, fast, and so on to boost the monetization, but also the interaction and the fan engagement when it comes to the sports industry?
Thank you. So for us, for our part, as the league, we have an obligation towards our broadcasters, our rights holders, to make sure they get the right content and good content. First of all, they get one of the best football leagues in the world, by far, I believe. And secondly is the whole part of the game itself and anything that goes around the game. And Don speaks about the second screen, and the second screen becomes very important also for us. But it's on us to make sure that the right content comes there, that the fan, and the fan is not only the fan in the stadium, it's the viewer at home. We are viewed now in 49 countries in the world, I believe, except for the region. So we really want to uplift this, and we want to show the world that the league in Saudi Arabia is a very exciting league. And if you saw the game last Saturday in Jeddah, I mean, this was, we call it mental, in a positive way. The excitement and the atmosphere that was there, and we want to bring this over to the viewer at home. And this is very important for us, where the fan engagement goes further than only the stadium. Second screen is very important for us to make sure that the entertainment part comes in. Football on its own is entertainment, and it's, for some people like me, myself and other ones, it's really top entertainment. But we need to add something more. We need to add something that the bigger audience stays. And this is an obligation we have towards our rights holders and our broadcasters. Add value to the content. This can be with data, this can be with short forms, this can be with additional footage that is not seen in the world feed itself, but later on comes in, that we can distribute. Shoulder content that we need to create for our broadcasters and together with our broadcasters, because Brazil is different than China. Europe is different, and within Europe you have the Nordic countries that are different. So the focus points for us is much more than one global thing. And there technology becomes very important for us in personalization of feeds and of products we deliver.
Thank you. Moving to Dom and the question on the infrastructure, because it's a very important topic and also challenge for many broadcasters. What key infrastructure and technology considerations broadcasters should take to ensure that they are operating with a good and streaming performance, let's say?
Right, thank you. Shall I wait 2 seconds?
Press and hold it.
Hello. Perfect. Thank you for the question. I'm very happy to be here. It's quite helpful for me now at Arqiva, being responsible for the infrastructure that broadcast and rights holders need to be thinking about and relying upon, because I have played a lot of the parts of my colleagues on the panel here in terms of being on the broadcaster side, the content owner, and working with sports federations and leagues. And for me now, sitting in the managed services space, I take that really seriously as a responsibility to make sure we're helping making choices that are the right choices now in a very hybrid world, with companies all having to think about different distribution models, running almost 2 or 3 different businesses, where we were just running a broadcast business. And therefore, everything that we are looking at in terms of our products and services really has to come from a hybrid approach. That meaning that we're thinking about what companies will be moving to and making sure that retrospectively it can operate in today's landscape. So what that means is using the best of IP and cloud technologies, but where we need it on premise, or we need a heightened awareness around cybersecurity, or quality or latency specific to sports. And my background is sports. I was at DAZN for 15 years, so very much know about streaming sport and cybersecurity and latency. So things that work for large audiences in traditional broadcast, we're thinking about how do you have one appliance, one operation that can then satisfy in a unified way your streaming capabilities as well. What I will say about infrastructure that is so important when it comes to streaming, especially if it's a live streaming event, news or sport, is really understanding the whole flow of where that content has come from. So I think that really informs the infrastructure choices that people should make. So understanding the integrity from wherever it was created, whether that's a live studio or a football stadium, when you come to stream it, what you get at that point from a quality perspective is critical when it comes to your success for streaming that to all of the devices that Dominic was talking about, and the historic devices that don't cope so well, and the most modern connected TVs. What you have at that last point, as you encode it and put it on the internet, you really need to concentrate on the infrastructure and integrity of those signals that have come to that point.
If I can add something as well,
Sure.
That's all on the content side, which is fantastic. What we've noticed as well is a lot of the publishers or the streaming platforms, they look at that side of the business and they forget the monetization side of the business. So they build their platforms on products that don't necessarily connect with the right ad servers, or then they connect with the wrong ad servers that aren't built specifically to actually air or to play out proper ads, video content in the way that they're supposed to. So absolutely right on that front, but also one of the advice that I would give to any platform today is, yes, they need to look at all the services that you've mentioned, but also not forget the ad solutions part if they're looking at monetizing from, advertising. And I don't think there's probably a sustainable model without an advertising arm to it, not just subscription. So look at that from your side, but also if they are interested with the advertising part as well, let them speak to somebody who manages ad sales, digital ad sales, so that they could support them on that front. Yeah,
I completely agree. It's a very complex area.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question to Dominique. How can broadcasters balance the need for innovation with the demand for cost-effective and reliable tech solutions?
It's extremely difficult to find that balance, right? But we talk a lot about AI, and I think you're going to hear a lot about AI today. We already have, because it's one of the areas that really is sort of revolutionizing many industries, and the media industry is absolutely one of those, right? There's so much AI going on now that actually one of the biggest challenges is picking which parts to focus on because it's fundamentally changing the way that we operate. And one of the great ways to drive innovation is through freeing up money and resources that you can help fund that innovation. And one of the best ways to do that is through driving incremental efficiencies into your business, and AI is absolutely perfect for doing that. And at NBC, we are using that. I think Dr. Mohammed was talking previously, saying that AI is not going to replace any roles. And I agree with him completely, to an extent, but there are many things that can make you as an organization way more efficient by using AI. And at NBC, we're employing a lot of these to try and drive those efficiencies into the business. We could probably talk for 40 minutes about them, right? But I'll just pick up a few different ones as an example, both in terms of efficiencies, but also in terms of new innovations that are coming about as part of this. So we are using AI as an example for clipping, for sports, for creation of highlights. So as soon as a sports game ends, we will automatically use AI to create highlights in multiple formats, using AI automatically generated. So there will be a 1 minute clip, there will be a 5 minute clip, there will be a 10-minute clip, and then we will use that to target those customers who we know have preferences for different viewing durations? Will we use UI to reformat that content? Because again, we are seeing, and everybody is seeing, that the way in which customers engage with you as your platform is changing. Some people prefer long form, some people prefer short form. So having AI automatically format and reformat content is extremely useful. QC, compliance. NBC as an organization is famous for being a very safe place to consume content. So we have extremely strict compliance rules of what is and isn't allowed. Now, I do not ever see a world where NBC completely replaces or automates this because it's so crucial to us as a business. But we do use AI today to do first run passes on all content, to check for nudity, to check for profanity. Right? So there are ways to drive innovation and savings into the business. A couple of interesting ones that I saw recently. I was in China a few months ago and saw some really amazing demonstrations of virtual anchors and virtual hosts. And of course, you can tell they are AI talking to you, but they are convincing, and they don't need to be paid, they don't need to sleep, and they can give customers and consumers the option to choose who presents their news, who presents their sports. Across multiple languages, you can literally switch between them. And we're also using innovation to breathe life into old content. So one of the really interesting things we're working on at the moment, at NBC, we have a really deep archive of old content from the 40s and the 50s, shot in really low quality in black and white. So right now we're looking at ways to breathe new life into this content, not only using AI to increase the quality, but also we're reproducing this content in color. So the AI is able to take black and white, low quality content, up-res it into HD in color. So breathes life into old content that previously customers may not have been worth wanting to watch, right? So it's another interesting way, an innovative way to remonetize content that previously was not being consumed.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, we use also a lot of AI, similar to everybody else, but I believe AI will not replace people, and I say to everybody, it will not take your job. Your job will become different, and your job will be maybe more concentrated on something, but we need always people to boost and to make sure everything is correct. So AI is an enabler for people to focus on other things that are more crucial in the whole cycle.
Sure. Nisreen, just referring to what Dominique was saying about the old content, I think Rotana has one of the largest content library in the region. So how are you adapting also your strategy? And my second question is on the AI and the analytics, the data analytics. How, from an advertising perspective, how is this supporting your monetization of advertising?
All right, so I'm looking at everything from a monetization standpoint, more so than a content standpoint. And what we've done is we've partnered with technology solutions providers who have AI within their systems that then we can use, of course, for efficiencies and to optimize the solutions that we provide. So, for example, from a data standpoint, we've partnered with Nucleus.ai, and what they do is they look at various parameters. If those parameters are brought into our CDP, if they are not, they look at behavioral, the way that audiences behave across those platforms, and then they start building profiles of those audiences. And we've had to do so because a lot of the publishers are so hesitant in providing those parameters for us because they're very hesitant in providing us data. So what we have to do is we have to start, we're using AI to build those profiles that broadcasters are not sharing with us for whatever reason, whether they're scared or whether they're worried about being compliant and so on. So that's number one. From an ad serving solution, we're also looking at scanning all the advertising that is then that goes on to the publishers themselves. So, you know, we've partnered with SpringServe. They're our ad serving solution, and what they do is, whenever we have any programmatic campaigns, the first thing is the AI solution that they offer scans the creative that is sent by the advertiser to look for any content that doesn't match or that might be competitive with the broadcaster who will air it. So that's another thing. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's replacing the layer of somebody physically actually viewing it, but the first point of contact is, let's do a quick scan. It passes, great. It doesn't pass, let's put a note why it doesn't pass, for then an actual human being to go back and confirm yes or no. But again, it's from an efficiency standpoint. We're looking at as well where, so that we don't disrupt the audience behavior, we're looking at where the ad will appear. So we're also testing solutions whereby AI would scan the content, and sometimes even in live situations, they would scan the content and they would look at things. For example, there's a scene change, so from day to night or from in to out, indoors, outdoors, so that then when we show our ads, those ads don't come mid-sentence, for example, or don't come mid-scene. They actually come between the scenes, and that's when we can do so. And finally, we're testing as well solutions with brands whereby we could actually look inside the content itself and identify locations where the brand can be integrated seamlessly. So, for example, at a lunch, if a scene includes, people having lunch on a table, we could actually insert dynamically. We could insert a water bottle or a soda can. If the scene is in a bedroom, we could insert on the nightstand a cream. If it's in the bathroom, a toothpaste, and so on. So these are things that we are testing today for these channels, and we're talking, these are analog channels that we are now looking at monetizing solutions for them using these types of technologies that we have partnered with.
Peter, are there some ethical considerations within this new AI approach that we should be aware of?
Well, there is always a quality control on a lot of things. And we try to do as much as possible and keep that in line. Now, the content we create is live. We also have internally an ethical code towards our directors, what they can and can't show. Although we don't want to go against the game itself, but there's some areas you don't want to show. And when it comes to AI, there is always a final approval before we publish something. And this approval is either is a digital team, what is very fast. We have the disadvantage today that we can't show any on our digital platforms, nothing that is ball in play during the live games, because we protect our rights holders. And the rights cycle that was agreed on 4 years ago, the digital platforms were not really focused on that much. So we don't have that problem. We can more do QC before it's published. But for sure, when it comes to AI, we will keep on monitoring it and making sure that whatever goes on air is quality. Because it's not only the censorship, it's also the quality on its own. I see a lot of times on TikTok or on other places, I see verticals, and I don't see the goal, I don't see the player, I see a green field. So this is created by AI, and nobody looked at it, and it was just published. And it doesn't add any value to whatever you want to show. And this is where the AI is still not 100% there, and where the human part is still in. If we look at our highlights we make, we have fast highlights, like Dominique says, and they come through whatever system. But the real highlights we publish on our websites and on YouTube are still made manually, combined with AI, but they manually are adjusted and extended, or making shorter, or if a commentator is cut in the middle of a sentence, we make sure it comes back in and everything is correct. So.
Thank you. Dom, beyond infrastructure, what emerging technologies broadcasters should consider to maximize this monetization aspect?
Yeah, I think just on the last AI point, if I can,
yes,
you know, at the CIO Expo that Gartner ran in November, they sort of classified businesses as AI ready or AI accelerated, and I think, much like people have said, there are use cases where you can be accelerated and take those innovation opportunities. But their overarching message was that it's okay to only be getting ready. Most of us have data that is a bit of a mess, and therefore to get ourselves to that point where we can let our businesses be open up in a responsible way. Many businesses are far off that, and I think everyone should feel okay at that. We, at the core of Arqiva, we are a security and data business, actually, when you really kind of wrap it up to the different applications. Without going there, we're critical national infrastructure in the UK for broadcast, but we also are in smart utilities for electricity, gas and water, and therefore underlying that is the running of networks, the security of the data and knowing where it is and what we're doing with it at all times. On top of that, we then innovate and try and create applications and services for people to run their businesses. I think for us, we're really looking now, as we have been a traditional broadcast infrastructure company with services, the new Arqiva is really leaning into the streaming elements of what businesses need and making sure our services are suiting that hybrid stance that everybody needs to take at the moment. With that, I look at the OTT ecosystem, and having had the opportunity to get into dynamic ad insertion and personalization of ads within my last role, with a mandate to get to every single type of end device, that is quite a task. We're looking at our platforms now and making sure they serve that purpose. So, for example, our brand new cloud playout platform that can be on-prem as well, that has to be able to now think about all of the different methods that we're serving content, whether that be traditional broadcast, OTT streamers, but also it's about content creators. That ecosystem is huge. There are content creators. There is a Manchester United one that has nearly 4 million subscribers. That's significant. And they're needing tools, lightweight tools that will help them monetize that content further. So when we build these things, we're looking at all of those three personas to make sure that you're giving them infrastructure that can help with personalization and monetization. Just on that streaming ecosystem, there is absolute control and capability between the encoder, the origin, where you create the content, the playout, and then your player. And we're looking for all of those different opportunities to adapt, whether it's to put in your own promotion content or to think about monetization opportunities, whether that's with HTML graphics and looking at all of the opportunities all the way through to those OTT video players to be able to personalize that and really extract the most of the monetization opportunity. Huge amount of innovation in that space. It's really exciting, and we're immersed in it at the moment.
Thank you. Yes.
I also think, for a lot of the broadcasters here, if they want to apply any strategies to monetize, they need to look at a number of different things. The first thing is they need to stop being scared about sharing data parameters. That's number one, because for us to be able to monetize audiences, we need to be able to know who they are. For us to be able to provide them with targeted advertising, we need to know who that audience is, so that we can share that information with advertisers and then pair those two together. Advertisers are looking for targeted audiences that makes sense for them. There's no point in an advertiser airing a piece of content that's targeting mothers to a 12-year-old. There's no point, for example. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is, if their channels are being carried, and most likely they are being carried by telcos, by pay TV, by other streaming services, if they want to monetize, they need to have a proper manifest with proper SCTI markers, the SCTE35 markers as well there, so that we can then identify where we can do the dynamic ad insertion, where we can do an ad overlay, where we can actually insert where the ads need to appear. Again, to make that experience seamless for the viewer, and to make that seamless for the broadcaster as well. So, and the other thing that they need to not be worried about is programmatic advertising. The biggest challenge here is the moment you say programmatic, broadcasters think it's automatically open auction, and there are other models today using programmatic that don't involve open auction, whether they are PG deals or PMP deals, whereby we as ad resellers or sellers, we actually negotiate with specific clients certain deals, and we create deals within those parameters that are closed. We understand the whole ecosystem, so they shouldn't be scared of programmatic. These are some of the things that I think the strategies that need to be adopted, or the tactics that need to be adopted by broadcasters and able to monetize from the get-go without them even doing anything in specific. And if they are building their own streaming platform, don't just depend on, all right, we are building this based on an international large tech company. They need to look at consulting with a local ad sales player who would help them in monetizing and make sure that everything can be seamlessly integrated.
Thank you. Last question, but I would like to hear your thoughts, all of you. I will start with Dominique, please. How can media players today leverage real-time analytics to create personalized ads and to boost performance, especially when it comes to cross-platforms usage?
To boost personalized ads or personalization?
Ads.
So look, everything starts with, Nazreen's just spoken a little bit about it, right? Everything starts with data, particularly with personalization. Your data is your lifeblood of your organization. If you're not making strategic decisions based on data, you're making mistakes. And people are talking a lot about things like CDP, customer data platforms, which are an amazing way to aggregate all of your sources of data to give you ultimately a 360 view of what your customer is doing, both for reporting, for personalization, both in terms of content and in terms of advertising, right? So at NBC, it's incredibly important for us to use this, because I can see not only what package my customer is on, but I can also see what marketing I've sent to them. I can see what devices they're using, what content they're using, what country they're in, what telco they're connected to, right? And hyper-personalization for content, for advertising, is about combining all of these data sources to give you the most accurate representation of your customer that you can possibly have, because the more you know about the customer, the more accurate your recommendations, the more accurate your advertising, and you can charge the highest CPM for that based on what you know about your customer. So it's incredibly important to have it, and you need to take these things into consideration. particularly on recommendations. People talk about content recommendations, right? And content-to-content recommendations, but you need to build the full picture into your vision of what you're going to be using. So not only what people are consuming, but when they're consuming, what time of day it was, what device they were on, because it fundamentally impacts what you should be recommending to them and when you should be delivering advertising for them. Because we have to look at these things almost at the household level, and maybe at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, people are watching kids content because your children are home from school. In the evening, you're looking at adult content. Maybe you're traveling and watching on a particular device. You're watching movies. You have to take all of these things into consideration when you're targeting your customers.
Exactly to that point. If you have that information and you don't pass it on to the advertiser, then what's the point? You can do so by recommending great content, but you're not really monetizing it to the best of your abilities, and you're not able to charge premium dollar for those audiences so that they are targeted, whether it's a behavioral target, contextual, whether it's lookalikes, whether it's cross-device platforms. We need that information to be able to generate money for the broadcasters. Otherwise, what's the point?
We need to listen to our broadcasters and our rights holders, and ultimately to our fans. And we need to make sure that we can provide content that is specifically tailored for regions and audiences. And this is our main task, I believe, as a league, to make it more than the 90 minutes and make it exciting for everybody. But again, we need to listen there to our broadcasters and ultimately, again, our fans, what they want to see. Sometimes we hear that the younger generation doesn't want to see a real full game anymore. They want to see a recap in 15 minutes. And they want to see a recap of the 4 games of that evening in 1 hour, because that's the way they consume. And we need to make sure we are technically ready to provide this to our broadcasters and our rights holders, and adapt constantly. So we need to be very dynamic. Before we could say in the next 4 years we're going to do this, now we are at the point of in the next 6 months probably we're going to do this, but maybe in 3 months we're going to adapt. We did a TikTok test. TikTok is a vertical, and now they put something on your screen, turn your phone, and we did a test on 4 games on TikTok. It was in Brazil and in, I don't know, Sri Lanka or somewhere, but we did a test and it was cool, it was different. So even the platforms change in what they want to show and how they want to show it. And we all need to be ready to adapt. And as a league, for sure, we are becoming more a technical hub where we need to make sure that everybody gets his own part, what he wants to have at any given time.
Just quickly, I think just to add and say something slightly alternative. I think, first of all, to monetize the content and using that real-time data, the other thing is to think about the leaks in the bucket. So from an anti-piracy perspective, looking at the real-time data, your quality of experience to work out, are they actually watching this content on your platforms or from somewhere else? And that's absolutely essential. And then using real-time data to, again, make sure that in all of these things we put into the streams to monetize it, that we're not, to Peter's point, we're not ruining that experience, and we are thinking about the viewer. Because all of these things are really technically intricate, and you might not care at the beginning because your ad is in there, but your viewers will churn if every time you put an ad in, there is a flash frame of something else. If that scutty marker and the timing hasn't been thought about and it's not the right quality, it's not a TV-like experience. And as much as we're changing to watch it on other devices, we still want it to be like TV, seamless. And I think if we don't concentrate on those, and the key to that is the real-time data that you're getting back from those players.
One last question, since Vijay is not yet here. On the CTV, I mean, since it's on the rise today in the region and every year, like on yearly growth, how do you see it from, what is the challenge actually when it comes to this fragmentation of sources today? CTV, but also other medium, on the performance of the platforms.
In terms of the impact of what's exactly, sorry?
In terms of advertising, in terms of content personalization, adaptive programming.
I mean, look, for us, we share everything across multi-platform. Right? The data that we share is incredibly important for us, but we don't really see a massive impact. We don't really see huge fragmentation. Right? We have to, as a business, you need to be where your customer is. You need to be on the devices that your customer wants to consume on. Unfortunately, that results in you having to deal with the overheads of supporting multiple devices for multiple players, right? And that does result in fragmentation. But it's just part and parcel of running any sort of large organization or broadcaster or OTT provider. It's what's necessary. You need to be where your customers are. And otherwise, that's the way that you'll drive the maximum amount of revenue into the organization and appeal to the largest customer base, which is fundamentally one of the most important things.
Atanas, IAB MENA predicts that by 2026, $500 million will be spent on CTV advertising. The biggest challenge that I see is if broadcasters go out about it by themselves, they don't have enough volume or scale for advertisers to buy. That's why we created a marketplace for all the small players. We are happy to onboard them to the marketplace so that they can become part of a consolidated opportunity for these advertisers to buy, to be able to find. Otherwise, advertisers will always go to YouTube, for example, which takes up more than 80% of that $500 million, right? And that doesn't get redistributed here in the region because, as we know, the investments will go straight out of the region and not get reinvested for producers to produce more content, for broadcasters to become more sustainable, and so on. So it's really crucial if they want to advertise, if they want to monetize, that they might have to look at having their advertising aggregated into our marketplace or into any marketplace that exists today.
Thank you. Anything to add?
Yeah. Today we're not a B2C. Not yet, and I don't know what's coming. Maybe in some regions in the future it can happen. In other regions we are relying on, again, on our rights holders and our broadcasters. So for us this is a bit more on the side. But the day we become a B2C, then we need to look at it. But what can we show? What is our volume, as you say? Where are we an add-on value in this world? But that's for today not on the table for us. We are supporting our broadcasters and rights holders here.
Lastly, I think to Dominic's point, the fragmentation, you've got to choose your suppliers well, make sure they actually have lived and breathed this stuff and it's not a proof of concept. And how do you choose your infrastructure and your service providers that then can shield you from some of that complexity, because it never stops. Devices become end of life, new ones come on, and if you're trying to create a consistent consumer proposition across all of your device types, often you can get pulled back to the lowest common denominator, that oldest device, or smooth streaming, and these things hold you back from innovating, and your producers and your content creators want you to move forward. So knowing that complexity and making sure that you can afford the fragmentation by using the right partners with no regret moves is key for this.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. There is a request, a very special request to take one question. So I'm going to allow that. Hussein, you had a question?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Peter, Saudi Sports League is the number 4th most in-demand football league in the world. You're one ahead of Bundesliga. However, Bundesliga have a significantly broader distribution. I wanted to know what the reason was for that.
Internationally?
Yes.
I would argue that.
What, in terms of the distribution?
Yeah, I mean, look at the Saudi League and internationally. It started 2 years ago in January. exactly when one player came in. That was the day the Saudi League became important for the world. If we see where we came from that day till now, we gained so much. And yes, we are the 4th league, and we are very happy. The original target was be within the 10, and I believe we are past that one already. It's something you need to build on. It's something that needs to grow. The Bundesliga is 25, 28 years there. The league in UK is how many years there? We are very young, we are very dynamic, very new. But I assure you, in the next 3-4 years, we will be there. And this has to do with not only international players, because it's very important for us that our local players are uplifted, and it is already, you see it, you feel it. Local players come in the picture, and they come in the picture internationally. We have some exchange programs going on in Europe, and everybody is really very positive about it. So I believe it takes time. Rome was not built in one day. So it takes time, and let's have this talk again in 4 or 5 years' time. And I'm 100% sure and confident that we are one of the top leagues, both in exposure, storytelling, together with our partners, because there's much more than only the football. It's how you bring it on screen, and that is uplifted now, and that goes even more. We have facilities, we have so many other things we're working on, together with so many other departments and parties. But I'm sure that in the next 4 or 5 years, we will be one of the top leagues, and by 2034, we are number 2. Number 1 is always difficult to say, but number 2 and 3 we are for sure.